welcome to this afternoon's webinar. I'm Sarah Thomas and work for York and North Yorkshire Growth Hub, and we're delighted to present this webinar in association with North Yorkshire County Council and Make It York, and we're thrilled that Clare and Abby are joining us from One Recruitment to give us the benefit of their experience and going to talk about how to deal with recruiting in this virtual world that we find ourselves in. So just a couple of housekeeping points, just to say, if anyone would actually, there's about 10 or so attendees at the moment. If anyone feels like they'd like to kind of join the panelists and just have their video seen and they want to talk, please just write in the chat box now and I can just kind of promote you to a panelist. If you want to remain anonymous, absolutely fine, and just listen in to Clare's presentation. Also, at the moment you'll just remain muted, but if you want to talk, just let me know, put it in the chat box and I'll be monitoring that. What we're going to do, we're going to have a 45-minute session, and then there's going to be 10 to 15-minute Q&A at the end. If you have any questions for Clare or Abby, if you can just pop that in the Q&A box, and then I'll go through those at the end, and then I'll pose those questions to the team at one-to-one. Okay, and I'll use the chat box to put information of Clare and Abby's details if you'd like to contact them. I'm sure you want some kind of follow-up or one-to-one sessions with the team. So without further ado, I'd very much like to hand over to Clare and Abby, and thank you very much for them joining us and giving us their expertise today. I'll pass you over to the host now, Clare.
Okay.
There you go, you're now the host. Okay.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Sarah. Hello, everybody. This is my first webinar. I've run lots of Zoom meetings, so I'm used to having a very interactive conversation with the panelists, but so this is quite different for me. But as Sarah said, if there's anything that anybody wants to ask during the presentation, something that that pops up, if you either put the question in the box or wait till the end, and then we'll go through them together and make sure that every question's answered as much as we can. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Clare Hutchison. I'm the proud owner of One Recruitment based here in York. I have spent, well, my life really working within the recruitment industry, and for the past 15 years I've been working out of the York marketplace, and I am really proud that myself and my team have helped hundreds of companies, micro businesses, SMEs and large corporates as well, to basically achieve their growth goals by recruiting the right talent to help them with that growth. So, you know, despite its awards and accolades, you know, we're all very proud that, you know, York has been voted top cultural city in Europe this week, which is absolutely fantastic, and we all know that anyway. But York does have its challenges when it comes to finding, attracting and retaining brilliant talent at the best of times. And now, sort of coupled with wider difficulties that the labour market faces now, we're having to obviously constantly review, refine and enhance our recruitment methodologies all the time. So what I'm hoping today to do is to give you an overview of the marketplace, what's going on out there, and particularly obviously from a recruitment agency's point of view. We're obviously at the coalface on the ground of what's going on day in, day out from a candidate perspective, but also from an employer perspective as well. We're going to be sharing insight into what we're seeing and hearing from candidates and other employers in the Yorkshire region, and more importantly, our view of the local recruitment landscape, and in particular, you know, now in these very unusual times. So that's a little bit about me. I'm just going to change the slide now. That's wonderful. Okay, so what I'd really love to be doing now, of course, is to be sat round a table with you all, looking you in the eyes, reading your body language, and you know, sharing ideas and having an actual proper discussion. But unfortunately, we can't do that at the moment. At one-to-one in particular, we've always prided ourselves on meeting every candidate face to face who applies for a position that we're recruiting for, and we obviously always visit every business that we work with to make sure that we have a feel of each business, and we can sort of gauge the culture fit and the environment, and you know what it actually feels like to work in there, so that we can impart that knowledge to the candidate. So you know, this new way of working is challenging for us all, you know, us as well as you, and me and the rest of the team, and I'm hoping everybody can see Abby on the call, Abby Pick. You know, we're all hoping that we can return to business as usual as soon as we possibly can. But in the meantime, what we're going to do today is share some thoughts and ideas around virtual recruitment, and in particular, how that you can all attract superb talent in this marketplace. So our objectives today are that we have a, well, I'm not going to read them out, obviously. The objectives are there. This is what we're hoping that you're going to be going away with. And I think what's really important is, you know, for you to understand what actually is going on out there. And I think everybody at the minute is thinking that it's a very highly driven client marketplace. In other words, that there are hundreds of candidates out there who've been made redundant, or you know, through one reason or another are actively looking for work right now. And yes, that is the case. However, what we're finding is that the best people are still in their jobs, and these are the ones that usually employers want, the people that are actually working right now. And of course, it's more difficult to tempt people to switch roles now more than ever, because employees now are opting for the more secure, excuse me, the more security, and all of a sudden, regardless of how they were feeling in their roles previous to COVID, they're suddenly gaining more of an appreciation for the job where they are, and that the grass suddenly isn't greener on the other side, because it's the fear of the unknown more now than ever. So what we're finding is that the best candidates are actually staying put more than ever right now, and it means that we all have to work harder really to try and attract the right people to the roles that we want, and of course it all starts within the recruitment process. Excuse me, have a drink of water. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to prepare right from the start for success really. And our goal as recruiters in York and the wider county of Yorkshire is to just make sure that all our clients have the best access to the best talent that's available. And we really work hard to create long-term placements that work for both parties, and the right people for our business, for your businesses, are really difficult to find, as we all know. So we as recruiters do try and set them up for success as much as humanly possible, and we also ask our clients to really think about these things as well. So on this slide here, we're talking about how you're going to prepare really for attracting the candidate that you want. And so we've already established that the best people are still employed by now, and you need to start planning on how you're going to attract the passive candidate. So these are the people that are not actively necessarily available. So people who are already working for your competitors or who are in your industry sector are the people that generally you want. In other words, you've got to try and target who you want in your business in the first instance. You've got to think about how you're going to do that. Are you going to headhunt? Are you going to research your competition to see what they're offering? Find out where your potential employees are actually looking or what they're reading right now. And they say second rule, I don't know if anybody heard the Radio York interview that I did from a candidate's perspective. Well, you know, from a job seeker's, from a client's perspective, sorry, who's looking at a CV, in so much as a candidate's CV has to be glaringly obviously right for their role within that 8-second timescale. And when you're putting an advert together and thinking about how to attract the right candidate to your company, it's the same. You've got a minute amount of time to get someone actually reading your advert and deciding to progress further there. So, you know, first impressions really do count, and you know, this does apply to your advert when you're putting it out there, but you also need to think about your brand personality and how you come across as a business, you know, how you think you're perceived by others outside of your business. And this is actually really, really important. What does your website say about you? What do your social channels say? Google, Glassdoor, you know, business reviews. You've got to think about how attractive you are to prospect candidates, and also remember that these savvy millennials that are out there job seeking right now, you know, they're the ones that will research everything about you and your business before they even think about applying. So you've got to think about how attractive the roles are that you're recruiting for. What your adverts look like. Are they selling your company personality? And does the language that you're using in them represent the type of person that's actually going to fit into your current team? So, you know, when I think in the past, I think employers have felt that it's the candidate who has to have the great desire and jump through hoops to impress them and to look amazing on paper and be brilliant in person when they're actually applying for a role. And that is obviously still the case, but because it's such a job-driven marketplace right now, you need to make sure that you know, when you're putting together a job advert, that you are actually trying to sell yourself to the applicant. You've got to show them why, in that advert, why it's such a great place to work, why you're a great person to work with, and to make sure that your company, that you know, is going to give them immense job satisfaction. And while it's still necessary to write a list of, you know, duties in the general job description, the majority of your advert really should be speaking about your company's core values and mission and the benefits and perks of working with you and your team, and why it's such a great place to be. And when you're writing an advert, you should always be speaking to your applicants directly. You want them to be able to envision themselves actually doing the job that they're applying for. So language is really important when you're putting an advert together. And you've got to think about how attractive the opportunity is as well. You know, you've got to include in an advert prospects, training, flexibility of hours available. And, you know, smaller businesses don't often have the ability from a benefits perspective to you know, compete with large corporates. But you know, you've got to use everything you can as a business like, I don't know, if you all have cake or pizzas on Fridays, or you have you give an extra day off for someone's birthday, or any little perk that you can think of that makes you unique as a business, and it's going to draw the right person to you. That should be in the advert. It's really important. And I think that, your recruitment process needs to set you up for success to find the right person. You need to think about your response, your speed of response, and it's got to be fast enough so that you don't let anybody slip through the net. You've got to make sure that you don't necessarily recruit like for like just because someone leaves the business. You've got to look at your team and the skills that you have in house, and rewrite that job description and make sure that you really are on track to you're focused on the person that you actually do need to fill that slot. Research your competitors and see what they're offering. The amount of times that we'll have a client who'll come to us and say, I want to recruit such and such, but last time we recruited it was 5 years ago and we paid this, and is that the market rate? And more often than not, no, it's not. And but what you've got to think about is it's not necessarily just the salary that's drawing people, although that is a factor. It's the other personal touches that you can offer as an organisation that will help engage that candidate. So, think about salary. Is there parking? Are you offering a bus pass to anybody? What training is there? So find out what your competitors are offering, and try and think outside the box a little bit to see what else you could offer that person. And really think about where you're looking for the type of person that you want in your business and where they might be looking. So we've already established that in this marketplace you need to attract passive candidates, and now what we need to identify is how you can find them and where can you advertise. Excuse me. So as you can see, all the various routes to market, I'm sure we're all familiar with these. There are swings and roundabouts and reasons as to why you would go to each of these areas, but to really give some thought to the type of person that you want, it's important to take into consideration, as I said earlier, where they will be looking, and obviously the age of the person perhaps that you want, sorry, not the age, the maturity of approach that you want. Do you want a trainee? Do you want a junior? Do you want someone with lots of experience? I'll give you an example. We use lots of different social media channels, and depending on the role that we're recruiting for, will depend on, certainly from a social media perspective, whether we would put that on LinkedIn or Facebook or actually Instagram, because younger people now, millennials, which I've already mentioned, they are looking on Instagram. They look there for a new job. It's my generation that are on Facebook, not the millennials. So it's really important to think about that, so that you're pitching it to the right audience. So you've placed your advert, you've decided where you're going to do that, and now it's time to engage the candidates in this new world of work that we're in. So the first of your problems could be that your job advert isn't getting enough traction. So if you plump for the job board route, which a lot of people do, posting an advert on a job board and praying it gets to the right people is a little bit like putting a message in a bottle. You can only hope that it gets to the right people. And you know, speaking of people, the majority of these, you know, those who end up applying for your job advert at the minute, I'm afraid, are often people who are currently employed, which through no fault of their own, that could be the case. But you're also getting a lot of people that will apply who don't have the skill set that you need. So you're getting a lot more people applying for your roles, but are you getting quality as well as quantity? That's the big thing. And, you know, sometimes, you know, as we've already discussed, you know, the best possible people for the job are usually already employed and not necessarily actively looking for work. So job boards, you know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And, you know, you've got to think that, you know, filling a role takes a considerable amount of time to find a really first class candidate. And you can end up waiting, you know, months and weeks until you get enough candidates to be able to choose. Incidentally, when you post a job on a job board, you will get your first application on average within about 14 seconds. So what happens with job boards is that it's a little bit like, you know, when we put something on Facebook or LinkedIn. Okay, so it starts up there, starts at the top of the pile. And then as the minutes, hours, days, weeks go by, it will start slipping down. And, excuse me, usually from an application perspective, you know, you're looking at, I'd say within the first 5 working days, you're going to get the biggest influx of applications at that point. And then, of course, as more and more people are using the job boards, and recruitment agencies use them, employers use them directly. So there's a, you know, massive amounts of people using the job boards, particularly someone like Indeed, because it's free unless you pay to sponsor the role. So you start off up there and very, very quickly are going down the pecking order. So if you're a candidate putting in a keyword search to find a role, you know, that could bring up in excess of 35 pages for a position that they've just typed in a keyword of administration. So your advert is going further and further and further back, and believe you me, once that candidate has applied for 12 roles over 12 different pages, they will lose interest and they'll just stop looking. So if you are going to use a job board, pick the right job board, and I would say to you to keep reposting it, even though that costs more money. I would keep posting it. Little tips of the trade there. What else can I say about the routes to market? I can talk to you all individually about how amazing it is to go to a recruitment agency, but I'll save that for a personal one-to-one afterwards. Newspapers. We have a few. We have a few clients that we work with that we will, you know, specifically advertise on specific sector publications and or The Guardian. So it really does depend on who we think our clients are trying to attract as to where we would post that particular advert, usually sector-led actually. And apprenticeships, of course. Bob, I know you're on the call, I can't see you, but I know you'll be smiling right now. Apprenticeships, there's some absolutely phenomenal incentives to take on apprenticeships at the moment. So if you've got the support network to be able to support those people, that's a great route, and incentivized as well. You know, your website as well. If you're going to put it on your website, just make sure that you're putting out on social media, or the link directly back to your website as well, so that candidates are drawn straight back to you on your website. And referral scheme, depending on the size of your business, or it doesn't matter what size your business is. If you've got 2 people and you offer them an incentive to recommend people that they know, and that person ends up getting the job, to give them some sort of incentive to do that. And again, it doesn't have to be monetary. It can be, I don't know, it can be shout out of the week, or it could be you leave at 4 o'clock instead of 5 on a Friday. So, try and be sort of inventive with it. And, it's the best way to get someone that someone knows, although that can get you sometimes into a little bit of trouble if you then have to reject that person. So just keep that in mind as well. Hasn't she got a lovely smiling face? So cheerful. So you've had your response to your advert, and now you have to be aware that whereas before communication was absolute paramount, it's it's never been more crucial than it is now. Everybody's feeling a bit disjointed and disconnected, and employers are trying really, really hard to keep their workforce that potentially is home working and has been since the crisis started. It's really, really important that you communicate throughout the whole of this process, really, so that people feel that they're on the journey. Basically, they're on the journey with you, and that you're caring about them and thinking about them with the touch points of communication that you're doing with them. Candidates as well, or job seekers in general, they're more nervous than ever now, especially if they're not used to being interviewed virtually. It's one thing talking to your friends on FaceTime and having your pub quiz with your family on a Friday night virtually, but having an interview it's a whole different ball game, and people are nervous about that, very. Excuse me. So with the market place being as it is, and a lot of us having to interview virtually, bearing in mind you've got a higher volume of people applying. In fact, the application per job over the last 2 months has risen by 84%. So going back to you're getting a lot more applicants, a lot more, which is very, very time consuming, but they're not necessarily the right people. You want to make sure that the people that are coming to interview, that you're selecting, that they understand what's expected to them, and that you're really clear from the onset what is expected of them, and what that candidate journey of the interview process from start to finish is going to look like, so that they feel a bit more secure about the whole thing. So I think that, it says on here that communication is key, and that's absolutely right. In fact, you've got to almost over communicate at the minute. We always start by even on the job advert, to make sure that we have a closing date on there, and that we have we can give the applicants an idea of when the interviews are going to be held. Now, we all have to excuse me, tickly cough, 1 second. So we've got it's important that you give people an idea of when the interviews are actually going to be, but you've got to bear in mind that you are fitting into people's lives. They may have children at home, they may have current workloads that that don't allow as much flexibility as normal. So just be prepared to be a bit more flexible when you're arranging your interviews. And it's also really, really important that you let people know who aren't successful. I think that's really important. The amount of people that we speak to that are saying, you know, I've sent off 25 applications and I haven't heard back from a single one, you know, is actually putting your brand at risk. They'll go and talk to their friends, they'll go and talk to their family, and they'll say, look, you know, I thought blah, blah company was a really, really good company to work for. But do you know what? They asked me to do a covering letter. They asked me to do an assessment. They asked me to do a role-specific CV, and they haven't even acknowledged receipt of it. So, you know, if you're asking candidates to jump through hoops, it's really important that you acknowledge, even if they're not right for you. And you know, I think, you know, when you are getting to the point where you're wanting to invite people to, you know, the interview, that you tell them, you're very clear on how you're going to be interviewing, when, what to expect, what the format of that interview is going to be. You know, is it going to be a informal interview? Is it going to be just a chat? Is there going to be other people in the interview? Is it going to be competency based? Anything you can do really to give them the best possible chance to succeed, because you want them to feel as confident as they possibly can so that you can get the best out of them. And it does say use technology to your advantage, but you know, you don't have to use it. You know, if you don't want to, I'm really sorry. I've got such a dry throat, so I'm sorry I keep coughing. So yeah, use technology to your advantage. You know, Zoom, Teams, etc., FaceTime. You know, brilliant. But you know, you don't have to use it, and you can still meet up with people if you feel comfortable. Bearing in mind they might not feel comfortable doing that as long as you're social distancing. So think about what works for you. And it's also really important when you're arranging the interviews and thinking about what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be saying on the interview, is that, you know, you do paint a picture about what it looks like now, but also what it's going to look like in the future as well when things go back to normal. So just have regular touch points with people. It's time to interview. Fantastic, my favourite part. So we've taken the candidate's feelings into consideration, but you know what you need to do is think about how actually are you feeling about it. Now, are you happy to do a video call? So what I've tried to do is to think of you know, some ideas really to help you along the way. And I think what's really nice is, if you've established who you want to talk to, is pick the phone up and have a chat with them via the telephone first. Okay, it'll break the ice. It'll you know, it'll be nice to them to have that non-evasive chat with you first. And as I say, it's just a good way to get them a bit more relaxed. Plus you get to hear what they sound like and decide whether or not you want to take them to the next stage, so you're not wasting yours or their time. And if you can, send some assessments to do some skill checking before you start booking in you know, your Zoom interviews as well. It's really important to try and distill your questions that you're going to ask as well, and that you do actually stick to the timings that you've promised. And because people are going to rely on this more so now than ever. And as I said earlier, try and be flexible with your timings for interviews so that you can fit in with children, their current workload and home distractions. Don't be rigid with your interview times. Otherwise you'll put people off because they physically won't be able to attend. I think it's really important to introduce prospective employees to key members of your organisation. So think about who you want on that interview with you. I had a client who always used to no matter what the interview was or what role it was for, they always used to have this one particular lady who'd been with the company for years and years and years. She'd started as a cleaner, believe it or not, and she ended up working as the head of finance many years later, obviously. But she was such a great walking advert for the company that they would always let potential employers talk to her first. And she was almost like the warm-up act. And, you know, she would help them feel more comfortable and give them a real idea of what it was like to work within the business before the interview started, so that, again, you're just making them feel as comfortable and confident as possible. So the other thing to really do is, you know, as well as think about who could be on the call, is, you know, consider putting together a digital multimedia package that might include, doesn't have to be anything majorly fancy, but things like recent articles that the company's been mentioned in about the company's success, or you know, a list of the sort of hiring managers' expectations that they can see in a snapshot for the position, and how how it fits into the goals of the team and the business. Or you know, you might want to do some little employee profiles of relevant team members. So, you know, it's really nice to get potential colleagues on the call as well, so that they can meet someone that actually works there. And keep your professionalism consistent when you're on a video conferencing call. It's still one of the candidates' first interactions with your firm. So it's really important that you communicate your corporate culture and, you know, in explicit and implicit ways, codes of dress, appearance, conduct, and so forth. So, you know, that should stay consistent. And also make sure that you're creating a distraction-free zone for yourself. You know, you don't want if you're working from the kitchen, you don't want a washing machine going in the background while you're trying to interview someone, and you certainly don't want a child walking in behind you when you're doing it as well. So make sure that, you know, you're in familiar territory and that you can focus on the meeting. Test your technology. We were doing this morning, weren't we, Sarah? Lots of times up to now, yeah. Your time is really valuable. The candidate's time is really valuable. You know, you need to use your time as efficiently as possible, and wasting 10 minutes figuring out how to screen share, or that the audio's working, or that you've got a strong enough internet, that's not good. So just check all that out, basically. And it'll help you to keep to schedule and avoid starting the discussion on where you're actually quite annoyed. So prepare yourself and practice with your colleagues, and make sure that your warmth comes through. So I think, you know, what we do on behalf of clients is we will actually prepare interview scorecards. We feel like they're a really good idea to ensure that everybody gets a fair and even chance when they're going for interview. So making sure that you've prepared all your questions and that you're asking the same questions to each individual, and then kind of jotting down between 1 and 5 how efficiently or how well they answered that question is really, really good to compare people afterwards. So we find that works really well. And everybody's asked the same questions. This is really quite key. I think as well, you know, you need to think about, you know, and explain to them what support they're going to have, what the touch points are going to be, how often they're going to be expected to, you know, report in when they're in the virtual workplace, who they're going to come into contact with the most, and how often. it's really tricky onboarding people into a business that they haven't seen or felt or experienced. So you've got to work even harder. And I think certainly in the interview process to explain to them what that virtual marketplace, what that virtual workplace is going to look like. I have some clients who are actually doing little virtual tours of their workplace and what it's like actually in the office, so that candidates can see what it looks like, even so that, you know, when things return to normal, you know, they've got some idea of what that normal looks like. So the next steps and expected timeframes are really important when you're interviewing as well, and, you know, how they're going to hear back from you, when they're going to hear back from you, will they receive feedback if they're not successful, and what the next stage is going to look like when it's going to happen. So, you know, I think when you are at the point where you are onboarding someone into a virtual workplace, you know, you've got to think about long-term engagement of that person. And, you know, we could be in this situation for many more months to come, let's hope not, but we could be. And you've got to consider really what humans are going to miss, you know, what we all miss when we're not working as part of a team. You know, Friday night drinks, lunches, coffees, and, you know, having a laugh about what happened on Coronation Street last night. Or, you know, how are you going to make sure that that person feels a part of the business and engaged when they're working virtually? And, you know, how are you going to bring everyone together so they feel a part of something, and that, you know, they're really in touch with their colleagues and the company ethos? So it's also really important, and put it in the advert if you can, but also if you can't put it in the advert, make sure that in the interview that you're still talking about career prospects, and, you know, what it says on here, professional development, and what that candidate, where that candidate can go from the job that they're entering into. You know, make sure they're aware from the onset what this is going to look like, what opportunities they're still going to have to be able to progress their career, as well as self-development. You know, where can this role go basically, and how do they get there? And companies are getting really creative with opening up online learning opportunities to make sure that people still know that they've got progression in mind for them. And you know, make sure that you're getting, you know, it says virtual socials on there. It's so important to make sure that people feel a part. You've got to understand that everybody else who works for you, you know, they know what a great company it's like to work for. They know how great an atmosphere and how relaxed it is, and how everybody goes for a drink after work on a Friday. But someone coming into your company from scratch, they've no idea. So you have to paint a picture for them so they can feel it. Now I'm nearly about to hand over to Sarah for any questions that anybody's got, but I've just got a couple of minutes just to share this with you, because this is something that happened just within the last 2 weeks. We a lot of the clients that we've worked with for a long time. This one in particular, I've worked with for over 12 years. So I know them really, really well. I know all the line managers. I know the culture of the business. I know exactly the type of person that they, you know, that will fit into everybody's teams in different departments, because I've worked with them for so long. And they did their first round for a role that they were recruiting for. They did their very first round of virtual, you know, they did a Zoom interview. And we always ask candidates as soon as they've come out of an interview to ring us with their feedback before they forget, because they do. And I had one of these candidates who'd been for this virtual interview who had such a bad experience, which was totally unrecognisable for me, because I knew them all. I knew exactly who was going to be on the call. I know the format of the interview. I know that they really go to great pains to make people feel really, really comfortable when they come in. It's a competency-based interview, but it's very soft, and they do meet the colleagues that they're going to be working with, etc., etc. And they're all real, genuinely great interviews that can get the best out of people. So when this candidate came out and said, "Oh, that was awful," didn't get a great impression. It felt very cold. I didn't feel like they liked me. I felt like I was giving all the wrong answers. I was really, really shocked. And to the point that I actually had to persuade this lady to go back for a second face-to-face interview, because they absolutely loved her. And I'm so glad I did, because everything that I described to her she would get from the interview, she did get at the second interview face-to-face. But I fed this back to the client, because they had no idea how they were coming across on this Zoom interview, and they really thanked us for doing that, because they hadn't practiced it. They hadn't thought how they were coming across in the interview, and it was like chalk and cheese. Anyway, the good news is she was offered the position, and she starts in 2 weeks' time. So that's a nice little case study to end with. So I am now going to just pass over to Sarah to see if anybody's got any questions that they would like to ask.
Thank you, Claire. That was interesting. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions that have come through in the Q&A. If anyone would like to kind of appear and video link, just let me know, put in the chat box or the Q&A, and Claire can answer a live question if you'd like to. Otherwise, I'll just run through some of the Q&A, the questions that have appeared in the feed. So we've had a couple here. So Claire, have you seen any change in the way or number of psychometric tests that have been used during the pandemic?
Yes, but no more than we're currently, that we used pre-COVID. I think that everybody's got sort of different opinions of these kind of assessments, and they are a brilliant tool. They're a tool that we use again for certain roles, and they're great to use as a snapshot and to contribute to your overall interview process. I think there's a danger to rely on them too heavily sometimes. So as long as you're reflecting in your interview questions, you're asking the right interview questions that reflect the type of person that you need to recruit. So your questions need to be completely different if they're working virtually. Then yes, they're a great tool if you are interviewing as in-depth as you need to as well for someone that's going to be working virtually. Yeah.
All right, thanks very much, Claire. Got another question more about apprentices, so which is really interesting. They recruit about 150 technical apprentices per year as the recruitment function within a large business. Do you think that advertising in tech-based online newspapers / technology-based content would attract this Generation Z, they call it, Z candidates? It is something that they've personally never thought about trying.
Yeah, it would be interesting to talk to this person and find out how they're doing it at the minute, and what's working and what's not. I think that well, the short answer is yes. And I think that, you know, well, it depends really on which ones they're going to use, which publications, and which, you know, which ones specifically to use. But I think, you know, over the years, you know, when I first started my business up 10 years ago, it was trial and error for me with my clients. I had to get the results to find the best people for my clients, for their sector, and for the role that I was recruiting for. And so, you know, I have to constantly review that to find out what is giving me the best results. And it's not like you put an advert on Read and for the next 10 years, that's going to be the answer to all your questions. It's not. You've got to review it constantly. But if what you're doing isn't working, then you do need to look at other options, definitely. So I would try it. See if they'll give you a free advert to try it.
So to the person that asked that, I did put in the chat box links to both Claire and Abby's email addresses if you wanted to have more of an in-depth discussion with them. I think it's really interesting to look at the apprenticeship angle, because you were talking about the age range, and if you're wanting to attract this Generation Z, as they call it.
Bearing in mind, though, apprentices can be...
They can actually, you're right, Claire. 60
now. I hope I'm right there, Bob. I think I am. So I know we always talk about apprentices being the young ones, but you can be an apprentice at any age, I believe, now.
Yeah. But as you said, talking about looking at attracting the right candidate and maturity, etc., you know, notwithstanding the age, you look at the different kind of, if you're looking at Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, etc., TikTok, I don't even know if that's used now for recruiting.
Ooh, I'll have to investigate that one, Sarah.
It might be.
Yeah, I know all about TikTok from my 13-year-old daughter, but I haven't thought about that for a... I'm looking at my beautiful colleague in the corner there.
Well be.
Yeah, YouTube is, you know, YouTube's a massive way forward.
Right.
If you can, you know, if you can position that correctly and strike the right note, you know, that's a great channel. And it's, you know, it's fully searchable as well. And it's, you know, it's all trial and error at the minute. There's no black white answer to that.
Thanks, Claire. Just one more question on the Q&A here. How often do you get asked about apprenticeships now that there's a financial incentive to recruit them?
Honestly, not as often as we would like. I'm a great believer in an apprenticeship program. You know, I wouldn't say I was taken on as an apprentice when I first went into work, but it was a similar sort of, you know, a similar sort of feel and similar sort of support level. You know, it's 50,000 years ago, but that happened. We didn't have the amazing, you know, structured approach that we do now. But, you know, I think that there is, you know, there is so much young talent out there, if only they can be nurtured and given the opportunity. So, you know, I would say very rarely are we asked about apprenticeships. I always obviously talk about them, Bob, but very rarely.
Right.
I think as well, just to add into that, you know, you have to have the infrastructure within your business to support an apprentice. It's not fair to take on someone with limited or very little experience and not make sure that they are looked after, basically. And, you know, if you're expecting an apprentice to come into a job that really needs someone experienced in, and you want them to get on with it, and you don't want to have to micromanage them, and it's not the way to go, because it's not fair on them. So I think you've got to think about that before you go down that route. But it is a great thing.
Thank you very much, Claire. Someone just saying thank you, so that's nice. And the gentleman who asked about the apprentice, is going to reach out to you. So thanks for giving him the information. Sorry, I'm assuming that the name was a male name there. Any more questions, please pop them in. Someone's written, yes, any age for an apprentice, and we hope there will be a programme for career changing hospitality for the care sector, for example. Someone's written in, yeah.
We're Abby's on the call, and she hasn't had much chance to say anything really because I've taken over. But I think that, you know, Abby is actually heading up our outplacement division, because we have so many people contacting us who are either being made redundant or who are trying to really focus on perhaps a different sector, or somewhere where they can transfer their skills from a job that they're already doing to widen the marketplace for them. So we are offering lots and lots of career workshops at the minute to help support people who are in that very situation, because if they're being made redundant in particular, they're feeling very insecure, they've lost a bit of confidence, and really they have no idea what they're even capable of doing, because it's, you know, it could be 10 years since they last looked for a job. And so we're arming people with as much information as we possibly can and getting them prepared to compete with people who perhaps do have sector experience, or they do have the exact job role on their CV, so that they can demonstrate that when they go for an interview. So to all you employers out there, I would say, you know, give people a chance, you know, let them, you know, don't just necessarily look at a CV, a piece of paper, and think that that's going to tell you who that person is. I'm sure you don't, but, you know, we very often, we pick the phone up to people that are very, very loosely connected to a job, and in actual fact, once they're given the opportunity to present themselves, or someone helps them present what they can do on the CV, their CV very rarely reflects who they are as a person. And most of us want the type of person that is right for our culture, is the right culture fit for our business. A lot of the rest of it, unless it's a very skilled role or more senior, can be trained. So that, I think that's why the majority of businesses that we work with come to us, because they know that we recognise that.
Great, thank you, Claire. There's just one more comment here I think was really interesting from Bob. We're hearing that young people are less anxious and more comfortable really about being interviewed online, rather than all the stress that you have associated with the physicality of, you know, attending the interview, how you open the door. So, and again, I feel more confident, I think, than being online and being virtual than you're in your actual physical situation. So do you actually need to adjust your interview technique then, Claire, really, for interviewing?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I think to have that initial telephone conversation with someone is really key, and is a gateway basically to lots of different ways that you're going to approach that particular candidate. Because I mean, if someone had said to me that I was going to be interviewing, you know, 8 people a day virtually 6 months ago, I'd be like, oh no, oh no, I don't want to do that. I like the face-to-face. But, you know, I'm really, you know, confident, relaxed, and know how to get the best out of people in this process now. But there are still people I will go and meet who, you know, prefer it that way, and that's absolutely fine. But it's horses for courses. So I think that initial phone call will sort that out.
Great. Well, there's no more outstanding questions, so unless you've got anything else to add, Claire or Abby, I'd just really like to thank you very much for your time today. It's been illuminating and loads of great comments there, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for all of you attending.
Yes, thank you everybody for coming, and you know where we are if you need any additional help or support.
Thanks again. We'll be ending the
Okay.
webinar today. Thank you, Abby. Thanks
Thank you.
for attending.
Bye.
Bye.